For the 20 coming minutes, we're going to have a fireside chat. I like the name. We're going to host Inara Pileti and Sabyasachi Sengupta. Yeah. Oh.
Just call me Sabi.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. But first, I wanted to, give the full name. So let me introduce Inara. Inara is a leads internal communications at Facebook for the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. She's based in London, and she has been working for 20 years in internal communications, also HR, across banking, news, but also tech industries. She always had in her focus the cultural transformation, employee engagement, and crisis leadership communication. So we're really happy to have Inara today. And then she also spent almost 10 years at HSBC in different roles. She's Brazilian, and she's been based in London for the last 3 years. Sabi, much more easier.
Yes.
So Sabi is a business developer at ABN AMRO Bank. He's also an author. He wrote a book called What is Your Plan B? That's a good question. I think we should spend a lot of time on this. And he's a very reputed keynote speaker in the Netherlands. He was the European champion of the public speaking Toastmasters. It's an association, and I invite you to have a look at what is Toastmasters after. So you're going to talk both together on the subject. Very interesting project, because we are really into it at the moment right now. So what is going, how managing, how communication is going to look like after the post-COVID, and of course in the workplace? How is it going to change the way we manage communication? Is there before COVID and then after COVID? So we got 20 minutes with you now, and I'm very happy to leave you the floor. Enjoy.
Thank you. So I guess I can kick us off.
Of course, you start. Yes, of course.
Okay. So I think a few reflections on how Facebook will communicate internally in the post-COVID world, right? I think things that we learned with this pandemic and what is changing in the way we communicate with the employees. So a few reflections. At the beginning of the pandemic, we saw people hungry for more information and for virtual connections. So we moved into an over-communications mode, reinforcing our benefits programs with company-wide sessions, leaders doing frequent check-ins with teams, announcing every single update in our workplace groups. And it worked. We saw a 40% increase in time spent on Workplace, which is our enterprise social network. And we also saw a massive increase across comments and reactions on the platform, as well as in attendance in our events. But, of course, after months of Zoom calls and virtual catch-ups with no clear separation between work and personal time, people are now exhausted, right? They are facing screen fatigue, and we know that mental health, of course, is top of mind. So we've pivoted to a much more targeted communications, more around what is specific for each location rather than big global announcements. And I would say that right now, small is mighty. Rather than having those large events with the entire team every month, we are replacing some of that with small groups or one-on-ones, leaders with teams to create a more intimate and welcoming. And then on top of that, Facebook also announced 50% of its workforce, half percent of its workforce working remotely on a permanent basis over the next 5 to 10 years. So the way that we communicated in the past, with the office environment being the core of our culture, will not work anymore, right? As we move into a hybrid work model, it's a full rethink of how we are running all of our people processes and our day-to-day work. And the internal comms team, together with HR and together with leaders, will need to revisit the entire employee's life cycle. So whenever we are hiring, onboarding, training, promoting, informing, engaging, we need to make sure that we are being inclusive with everyone. Bottom line, I think here is lockdown is temporary, but changes in behavior will be permanent. There's no going back. And we are front and center in this new employee experience, right? So we'll have more and more remote workers in different time zones, meaning that our comms plans will have to be multicultural, multi-channel, a mix of live and recorded. And actually, we started doing this already. And we'll need to keep giving everyone a voice, encouraging remote collaboration, creating more meaningful experiences at work, and also a sense of belonging that ultimately will drive performance, will continue driving performance. And now maybe I can hand over to you, Sabi, to...
Yes. I fully agree with you. I think it's very insightful that everything that large organizations or companies are suggested to do right now, Facebook is already doing, you're already doing. So that's great news to hear. It's kind of, because what I also noticed when the pandemic started, we were still in many companies, still doing the old school communication, relying on the weekly newsletters or monthly communication, or this once a month meeting where message and communication was communicated with the team. And yes, there is Zoom fatigue. Yes, there is fatigue to look at the screen. But now we are coming to a point where we realize this is going to be a reality. It's not like it's going to go away in 2 months and we're going to all go back hugging each other on the floor. So I have seen, and I was just giving a talk to another company, that companies that have more one-on-one communication within the team, with the leaders and the employees, and even between the employees, are actually doing better because there is higher engagement. People are feeling motivated, and it's not has been just difficult in terms of communicating through Zoom. It has also been difficult communicating situations, because I think we all have been somewhere affected by this COVID period. We all know people who have lost near and dear ones or have been suffering. And sometimes as team members, you are confronted when you you reach out to someone for work and you hear a story that they're going through. And it is really something that we are learning and have to learn, to have that right amount of empathy, where you can handle situations like that, where people are grieving from a loss, and you don't say, okay, that's fine, but how much have you done work today? And that kind of sensitivity will play a huge role. And again, empathy, sensitivity, these are not things that one can learn in one day or at a snap of a finger. You learn by practicing. And I can tell you, I come from the Netherlands, which is known for its directness, and rather people are very proud of their direct communication, which is great sometimes. But sometimes I feel it can lack empathy. And I think that is one thing the communication in future will need, definitely empathy and sensitivity to when you're communicating, and more personal connection, even if it's through a screen. What do you think?
100%. And I think the role of leaders when they are communicating has changed a lot, right? So I think lockdown has affected people in different ways. So what leaders are having to do right now is to exercise extreme flexibility and empathy, as you said. So I feel that the work of leading has changed. We are moving from an era of inspirational leadership, where leaders are on the stage talking to people, to a deeply empathetic leadership where they stand side by side with the employees, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, to your point, the second lasting change that I've seen is a more human connection, and human ways of communicating. The work became more human. So we've seen leaders showing up in really authentic ways. It's simply no longer possible to start a meeting without asking how you're doing, how are you feeling, how's your family. We connected to people in a more intimate way. I mean, we see their bedrooms, right? We hear their kids crying. We know their dogs. We
Yes.
know their cats. Leaders are communicators. Leaders and communicators. They are realizing that less scripted is better. And if it doesn't look perfect, it has to be real.
Yeah.
Someone said,
It
and
has
I
to be
love
real.
it, in times of change, what we want from our leaders is presence, not perfection. And so I feel that they are learning how to get comfortable with not having all the answers, with not
Yeah.
having all the talking points, and with saying, I don't know. And instead, taking the opportunity of this not knowing space to ask questions, to listen, to understand what people think, and ultimately, I guess, to co-construct, right? Anything that you would like to add here, Sabi?
I think I fully agree. I think it's absolutely correct what you just said. And I think also listening is becoming such an important skill. It's not just being on the throne and giving advice. It's actually listening. And I tell you one of the stories, like in some companies, I sometimes give workshops on storytelling. And in the old times, it was all about presenting and everything. But I introduced a new thing in the pandemic world. It's about the transitions. And I think transition in communication will also play a huge role. And I know this because, for example, I'm opening my heart to you that this has happened and this has happened. And then, you have a particular agenda of something you want to ask me. And then how you transit from that topic to the next will really give me the feeling how much do you listen to me or how much you cared about this topic. And I understand you need to ask me about work and you need to ask me about what is going on. At the same time, you don't want to spend the entire 1 hour talking about personal stuff, but that transition will play a huge role and something we don't pay attention in-person meeting, because there you can just shake hands or give a hug and then move on. But when you're not in next to each other, that transition, when I say cut you off and I move to the next topic, will be the litmus test where people will judge if you're sensitive or not, if you've been listening or not, if you care about me or not. Some people don't do it deliberately. It's just in their nature. They're restless. They're like, okay, I want to move from X to Y. But this is one thing I personally think people need to pay attention to, how they're transiting from one topic to the other.
Genuinely, right? So I guess it's the exercise of listening to you without thinking about what I am saying next, or what my answer will be,
Yes.
so that I can be fully present and fully listening to you, because that's how new ideas get in, and that's how we welcome different perspectives without replying to that immediately, but with taking, you call this transition, I like how you call it, but with taking the time to digest,
Yes.
to process the information, and then of course to sharing your perspectives and building something in a
like listening is not waiting for your turn to speak. Listening is actually listening.
I love this concept. I think Sabi, we've been talking about empathy and the new role of leaders and communicators. I would say that right now mental health is top of mind for everyone, right? And I can share like a little bit of what we are doing at Facebook, but I wanted to hear from you, from your perspective. How do you see us working together as leaders, as communicators. Sorry?
Your internet is sometimes cracking. Your internet is sometimes missing some.
Maybe
please go ahead. I want to.
Yeah, if I switch off my camera, maybe.
But now I can hear you perfectly, so it's fine.
Okay, so I was saying that maybe I can share a little bit of what we are doing at Facebook around mental health, but I would also love to hear from you how you guys are fighting it, are working to minimize the risks of mental health. So I think with the pandemic lasting much longer than we initially anticipated, people's well-being became the absolute priority for leaders, internal comms, HR. We saw people back-to-back in meetings the whole. Because let's be honest, we are only a click away from our next meeting. So we tend to schedule back-to-back meetings in order to be more effective, but we create the opposite effect. In our third or fourth meeting in a row, we show up not refreshed at all and not as sharp as we could be. And people also stopped dedicating time to digest information, to listening to others. So two things that we did and that we are doing at Facebook around well-being. The first one is around our company new programs and benefits. We launched a mental health resource hub to where we pointed managers and people, and we have several events with experts that you can join to get some inspiration. For instance, fireside chats with Sheryl Sandberg, our COO, and also Adam Grant, the New York Times best-selling author, where they share strategies to identify and address burnout. Last year, when we started working from home, we saw people really stressed out and trying to perform in circumstances that where they just weren't able to work full time. So we had to find ways to take the pressure off. And we took away performance ratings in the first half last year and paid out the bonuses, considering all individuals' multipliers as exceeds expectations rating. So this was a huge relief for everyone. We also created some special COVID leaves for people who is struggling with their mental or physical well-being or need to take care of someone in their family. And Mark kindly gave us 2 extra bonuses to help setting up our home offices. You can see that I didn't do much. But anyway, on top of that, as a way to thank people for their resilience and continued hard work during this tough period, Mark gave us 3 days off last year and 3 more this year. One of them is tomorrow. Yeah, long weekend. And what happens is that with the entire company switching off, people are able to truly stop and rest. Yeah. And the second point, really quickly, is around information overload. We know that there's a direct link between people's emotional states and the quality of communications that they receive within the company. So internal comms play a crucial role in people's well-being, whether it is educating people, inspiring people through storytelling, as you know well, Sabi, coaching leaders to walk the talk. And what happens is that if we give people mixed messages, not enough information or too much information, it all adds up to people's stress. Yeah. So what we've been doing at Facebook is like simple things as a weekly summary of the top announcements so people can quickly scan it through and catch up. We educate and encourage people to manage their workplace notifications. We have thousands of groups on Workplace and an incredibly open culture where information is broadly available internally. So anyone can create a group or write a post but this creates an overload of information.
Yeah.
So we need to help them navigate the noise.
Yeah.
And simple things like replacing some video calls with phone calls while you go out for a walk and breathe some fresh air, or adding a few breaks and buffers to your calendar during the day, and of course committing to it. I think the bottom line here, Sabi, is no matter what kind of initiatives you have in your company, it has to be more than a one-off, a one-day of meditation, a one day off. We need to create a culture where breaks are encouraged and where breaks are respected.
Basically, at this point of time in the COVID things, what we feel is afraid, we feel lonely, and we feel helpless. If we can, through communication, make people heard, we care about you, and we make people feel that we are with you in these times, you're not lonely. I think that will do enough. I mean, we will find solution within, we will find ways to innovate, create magic in mundane, but we just want to be heard, want to have a hand in case we fall. That's all I think. That's all some people are looking for, in my opinion.
Yeah. I would summarize this, Sabi. What you were saying is like at the end of the day, it's all about human connections, human behavior, the human needs. There's no other way to make these connections and I mean, keep people informed, connected, supported, because I don't know, I spend more time, everyone, right, spends more time working than like with our loved ones. So while we are here, we need to feel this connection with our employees and colleagues.
Fully agree.
Well, listen, I could stay here for hours, but
me too. I think we.
Yeah,
I think
he's already here again.
I think you and me should schedule a call about this.
And I think a lot of the attendees have share exactly the same feelings as yours, saying that those little walks that we used to have going from an office to the other for a meeting was really important, because it helped to think or do things that now we just have behind our computer and go from one meeting to the other without moving. So lots of people have the same feeling as yours, and we also have some people, attendees, that are saying that we need a lot of serendipity. So very, very nice to hear you both on effective new ways of communication before or after the COVID. Thank you again, and it was a real pleasure to have you both. Now we're gonna have another session, and it's bye-bye.
Bye.